Greetings, Guardians, my name is Bife here. So there are a ton of interesting tidbits of lore in the new Spire of the Watcher dungeon. Whilst a lot of it relates to the Vex, Osiris, Clovis Bray, the Witness, and the AI that was trapped within the Ares Spire, there are a curious little set of mysteries that occur alongside all of this. In short, it appears that Eramis, the Kell of the House of Salvation, infiltrated the Spire of the Watcher before we did, and before the major Vex incursion by the Sol Divisive was underway. In her infiltration, she planted a series of 6 recordings, all of which were directly addressed to us. Today we're going to talk about this story, hear what Eramis had to say, and see what more it tells us about her beliefs and her place in the current story of Destiny. Before we really dive into this though, I think we need some details. I think it's important to acknowledge the skill that's on display here above all. Not only did Eramis identify a station that we would have inevitable interest in, as it was brought to the surface from the depths of time rifts within Mars's surface, but she also managed to infiltrate it, bypassing the watchful eyes of both the hidden and the internal security systems of the Spire. This also means that she was able to make it in and out of the bunker before we even arrived on scene shortly afterwards, and it probably means that she also beat the Vex of the Sol Divisive to the station as well. Why do I say all of that? Because she left no trace except the recordings. If there was a major fallen incursion here and she'd had a bunch of help, you might see ramshackle supplies and crates worth of goods here, as well as the obvious infiltration points that the Elixni used. They might have busted open one of the walls and used jerry-rigged bits of tech. This is something that's pretty typical of the Elixni, but when we enter the bunker, you see none of that. We see almost no evidence of focused tampering in the internal works of the station, except for the recordings that are left. And if Eramis had run into the Vex, even though they're on the same side, I hardly think that the Vex of the Sol Divisive are going to take the opportunity away to potentially kill someone off. There is the chance that she might have had to fight them, and yet there are no Vex bodies here. They have maybe not been commanded to recognize her as a threat, but regardless, she left little to no trace of her incursion if the Vex were involved. It's pretty seriously impressive stuff. She was trying to hide her tracks here. She wanted no one to notice until we got there. However, the moment that we jump into the facility, we can really start to see the nature of all of this. And it's here that we get our first log as we go down the long Warmind chute and find ourselves in the opening area. It's at this point that we really need to note a small detail here as we look at our first log. These audio logs can be identified when you see a fallen sigil on a computer monitor in blue, which makes some sense because blue is the color of the House of Salvation, Eramis's house. The catch is that the symbol being used here isn't actually of Eramis's current house, it's of Eramis's old house, the House of Devils that had collapsed at the beginning of Destiny 2 when the Red Legion arrived. There are 6 audio logs that can be found throughout the facility, all of them with the House of Devils symbol on them, all of them in a different color from that symbol in blue, and yet one that matches Eramis in the House of Salvation, and all of them leading to a rather mysterious story. Let's go ahead and play all of them back to back, and then I'll give you the kind of lowdown and summary.
Welcome, machine servant. I knew your city would send warriors. Do you think you are here to face me? In old duels, house rivals met with honor. The first blooded blade ended the duel. But now we do not look to houses or enemies with honor. I am alone, watching your traveler as I was the day it fled Reese. My blade grip in challenge. But I have not come for a drop of blood. House Salvation understands your collapse. A whirlwind left in the wake of gods. We wade through it still. The sigil on the screen, an old house, an old ideology, a failed tradition swept away in that wake. The devils are gone. At times I feel like I am with them, that this is my penance. To remain lucid as the chill creeps into my flesh and my heart grows numb. As on Europa, to survive, I must kindle flames where I find them. Step away from your traveler before its machinations rend you limb from limb. We have no need of gods. The people here feared a future of gods so much they created their own, to enslave themselves to it. Absolve themselves of will for protection, for certainty, as you have done, as I have been forced to do. But does your future feel certain in this moment? Do not struggle in loss. You would only cause untold bloodshed and pain. I know this.
So, to summarize, Eramis addresses us, the Guardians specifically. She also makes it clear that she's not looking for combat, describing how in the times of Old Reese, Eliksni who honorably challenged their rivals would fight until the first blood was drawn and then no more. She says that she has not come looking for blood. She describes how the Eliksni understand the collapse of humanity well, which is something they are still experiencing, aka the whirlwind that left them in the state that they are, as the wake of gods was something they experienced. The gods that Eramis is referring to here include, of course, the Traveler and the Black Fleet, the Witness, the Gardener, whatever you may call it, but also Rasputin. And she actually describes the effects of all of this. She describes the sigil of the House of Devils and talks about how her old house is a part of their own collapse, the Whirlwind, a part that persisted all the way into Sol as an old house, an old ideology, and a failed tradition, all of it which was swept away by those gods in the wake of the Whirlwind. She describes how the Devils are now gone, but that she sometimes feels like she is still with them, lucid and present, but slowly dying as the cold creeps into her heart and flesh. She's clearly dealing with some loss. She feels as though she's being made to suffer in that respect, but she also understands that she has to survive doing whatever she needs to. As she puts it, she must kindle flames wherever she finds them to survive, just as she did on Europa. This, I think, is her directly referring to how she chose to pick up the darkness as a tool of power to use against the Guardians. This also levels with Eramis's principle that survival is the only thing the Eliksni can look forward to in the future at current, aside from their slow and steady rebuilding under the House of Salvation, and that there is a brutal necessity to the principle of survival. But next is probably the bit where it gets really strange. She implores us to step away from the Traveler before it destroys us, saying that we have no need of gods. The final audio log at the very top of the spire states to us that the people of the Ares Spire feared gods, aka the Traveler and the Black Fleet, the Witness, and they feared them so much that they created their own gods, their own higher power in the form of the Warmind, in order to escape the uncertainty that other gods might bring. Eramis then states that the gods we have bonded to, such as the Warmind and the Traveler, are not a sure path to certainty and safety, and that even she has been forced to absolve herself of her own will under the wings of the Witness. Finally, she asks us a simple question. We may have trusted our fates to the gods that we built, but she asks us if our future feels certain in this moment, having done that. Her very last note tells us that we should not struggle, as it would only cause untold pain and bloodshed in that moment, and that she knows this well. So what does all this really mean? And what is Eramis doing right now, and what's going on with her? I think this is Eramis trying to reach out in the only way that she knows how to us as a means of trying to save us from torment. This is a mission of mercy, compassion, and respect, even if begrudgingly. In order to understand why it is that she's doing all of this, I think it's worth remembering where she as an individual is right at this moment. She just failed in a rather calamitous way and is seeing the whole of her house being used as cannon fodder between Shivur Wrath and the Witness. Some of them are being converted into Wrathborn, others are being press-ganged into becoming Scorn. To understand how this has affected Eramis, I think it's important that we read the lore from her perspective, and in particular the lore of the Path of Least Resistance trace rifle. This trace rifle describes a painful event for Eramis where she sees an old friend of hers turned into a Scorn. And remember, all of this is from Eramis's perspective. The lore tab reads as follows. Eramis always looks scorn in their eyes. She does it to assert dominance, she once heard one of her subordinates say. Rather than correct them, she let the rumor take root and grow wild and fierce. There is no one left that she trusts enough to share the truth. Eramis always looks scorn in their eyes because she's desperate to see some faint flicker of the Eliksni they were before. The first time the Witness presents her with Pyrrhus, with whom Eramis fought alongside in life, she wills herself into something that resembles human steel. A gift, claims the Witness, but Eramis cannot find her voice, not even to feign gratitude. She reaches up, grazes claws against the side of the Eliksni's face, and searches for any sign of her friend. Yet all she sees in Pyrrhus's eyes is her own reflection, glassy and alien. Eramis wants to scream. Part of her is grateful when Pyrrhus sinks teeth into the flesh of her forearm, giving her an excuse. One that doesn't make her appear weak. What drives an enemy, one that we've had some bitter conflict with, to reach out peacefully to a foe with words of advice? What is compelling Eramis to reach out to us now, to tell us to abandon the Traveler, to get out as quickly as we can? What forces her to advise us on how best to avoid such pain and suffering for ourselves? I think it would be fair to say it's a mix of compassion and fear. She wants to avoid the fate that she has seen befall her friends, but she also understands that such a fate is worse than death, and I don't think she even wills it upon her worst adversaries. She wants us to be free from the greater will of gods that have crushed all that adore and oppose them beneath their uncaring weight. Above all, I think she wants us to realize that she is trying to be merciful by helping us find an easy way out. Of course, the easy way out at this point would simply be to pack up and leave, and forget all about the Traveler, the Winnower, and everything that has befallen the Sol system. It's not so easy, of course. Maybe she is also simply asking us to kneel and be subservient to the Witness so that we might avoid the suffering that has befallen her friends. After all, Eramis knows too well that the alternative to this is too terrible to comprehend. We've always known that even as she sits on the other side of the war of light and dark, Eramis is motivated by factors that were ultimately admirable. Preserving her people's dying heritage and sense of unity, bringing her people together so they could build a better future, fighting for a world where the Eliksni would not need to starve, working to protect her family and friends, these are all admirable motivations. But now it feels as though Eramis has been forced to betray all of those ideas in service to the Witness and its grand designs. All she can do now is watch as her people suffer and slip us this small warning, this momentary piece of advice, something that allows us a little bit of insight into her suffering perhaps, something that gives us an idea of what is at stake when she talks about the House of Devils that was lost. Something that lets us realize that she's in trouble, and that we will be too, if we don't just set down our arms and embrace what has already befallen her. What I fear now for her is that even as she worked so hard to carry out this most noble of missions, and even as her intent was to ensure that only we would find such recordings, that only we would obtain this warning, that our actions in the coming months will ignore that warning and will ultimately prove to only be a disappointment to her. War is coming to Sol. A side must always be taken, even if it is the wrong side. And now, we stand firmly on one side of that line, a side that is in opposition to hers. We have no choice but to live with the consequences of that. It's just a shame from Aramis's perspective that she already knows the price of failure and the price of rebellion. She understands the stakes, and I think that by infiltrating the Spire of the Watcher and leaving us these messages, Aramis was trying to make us understand the stakes as well. The Witness will give no quarter and does not care for anything other than subjugation. If we don't comply, there will be suffering. But that's all from me for now. I hope you enjoyed the video and I hope it gave you some context on the lore of the Spire of the Watcher. There is still a lot to get into with that. The little recordings left for us by Aramis literally only scratch the surface of one of the stories currently going on in the universe of Destiny. There is a lot more that we still need to look at, and frankly, I have many videos that are already written on it. Even just today, as I record this, I wrote 2 scripts for a total of 12 pages worth of stuff. There's a lot of stuff coming along. Martin and I are now on a schedule where we're doing a video every other day to upload, but we should be keeping that going for the next month or so. It's going to be an exciting time, and I really do hope that we can find some great content for you all out there that you'll all enjoy on the season and of course on the upcoming stuff to do with Lightfall. But that's all from me for today. If you have your own thoughts, leave them down below in the comments section. If you want to go ahead and show your appreciation, go ahead and leave a like, and hit subscribe and the bell next to subscribe to turn on those email notifications. We are very close to getting to that point where we have 1 million subscribers. We're on that last 10,000 or so subscriber push. I imagine that we'll get there by Lightfall, but it would be nice to get there before that. So if you haven't already, go ahead and hit subscribe. You could be one of those last few, you could even be number 1 million if you time it right. Either way, I look forward to seeing you amongst the crowd, and it'll be nice to have you on board. And of course, regardless of whether you do or don't do that, know that as per usual, your viewership as always is quite enough for me. And that in the meantime, my name is Byf. Rhodacia ad Astra. I'll see you, Starside.